So, what is RA21? Resource Access for the 21st Century. It's a joint initiative from NISO, the National Information Standards Organization in the U.S., and the SPN publishers. We're trying to bring in as many stakeholder groups as we can, including libraries, federation operators, publishers, vendors, just about everyone we can. Our announcement list that people subscribe to in order to keep informed of the next workshop and whatnot has over 400 people recently. So the news is getting out, the project is happening. So what caused all this to start? Long ago in a galaxy far, far away, you may remember, but it's probably well before your time, when we started first transitioning to digital. At that time, the way sites authorized access was if you were on site, the IP address was recognized by the content provider, and everything could work. Which was fine because all the computers were on site. There wasn't much in the way of personal computers. People had internet in their dorms, in their coffee shops, on their phones, and what have you. That was a long time ago as far as the internet age is concerned, and since then technology has evolved quite a lot. We're seeing much more in the way of diverse ecosystems of how people are accessing material, what they're accessing material from, and their expectations on how easy it should be have definitely changed a lot over time. So we've made a couple of baseline assumptions here. You may or may not agree with some of them, but this is where the project is coming from. First, we're working under the assumption that the whole IP-based access management is increasingly problematic. There's just, in the corporate world, those IP address ranges, they change a lot. In the academic world, people are accessing more and more things from off campus. IP address is becoming increasingly that access is not seamless from different devices and browsers. And this is an urgent enough problem that everyone's trying to solve it in a slightly different way, leaving the user with an incredibly inconsistent experience. A lot of this results in an increased amount of piracy of material and downloads. So on campus, as we said, if the user is going to go do a search, they'll probably go to Google. They'll find what they're looking for. They'll say, yep, that's it, that's what I want. They'll click on it, that's your first click. They get the link to the article. They click on the PDF, their second click, and they're there. That's it, that's all they have to do. When they're off campus, they do the same search. They find the article they want. They click on it. They get sent to the content provider. They click on the PDF. Then they get their login screen, where they have to figure out, all right, well, I do want to log in to my home institution. Great, that's the third click. Then they have to find in an interesting list, and that list is presented in a variety of different ways, what their identity provider is, assuming they know, and that's what's left of it. So then they go into that federation. Oh, look, now they've got to narrow it down even further to their institution. And then they can actually do their login. Perhaps less than ideal. So all that said, and that being our baseline of where we're coming from, we have a couple of principles that we're working by that says, at the end of the project, how will we know that this is successful? We'll have a solution that cannot be proprietary. We're not trying to build a product that will be sold by a particular group, not product research for any vendor. The solution should be reasonably easy to implement. It's not going to be a Docker container. It's not going to be just that simple to roll out that you don't have to do anything. We're trying to make it as simple as practical. It must be vendor neutral. This is what we're working on, best practice here, such that all the different vendors out there can incorporate the best practice into their own platforms as much as they do appropriate. And go from there. Again, we're not creating a product to compete with the started. There shouldn't be an enormous amount of cost ongoing maintenance of burden on either the identity providers, libraries, or the publishers happen. We're also not talking about a flag day of, okay, in order for this to work, everybody in the world needs to change all their things at the same time. I'm pretty sure that's a bad idea, so that's definitely not perfect. So at this point, there are 3 pilots. There's a corporate pilot and 2 academic pilots. The reason we've got these pilots, I mean, as I said, we're not trying to develop a product or technology. But what we are trying to do is to say we have best practices based on actual tested ideas. There's been a lot of coming up with best practices that are sort of an ivory tower idea of, well, if we were, kings and queens of the universe, we would have it like this. Therefore, the best practice is what you should go implement. Oh, not implementable? Sorry. And actually having the technology there to test against. You can say, okay, this is best practice, and it actually can work. We know it can work. We've tried it. We're also expecting to find things of, okay, this would be great, but this doesn't work at all. It's either not privacy preserving enough, it's too hard to implement, it doesn't have browser compatibility. We want that now. We want some of this stuff to fail. As it's failing, we'll learn a lot. So, in terms of timeline, we've been doing a lot of outreach to this point. The development teams have been working on their platforms. We don't have, we're almost at the point of having user testing. So people who aren't developers, they just want to offer feedback on the user experience or whatnot. We're almost at the point of training those folks. And hope to have that done in Q1 next year. Once we get that experience happening, we'll be able to start saying, here are the best practices. In the short term, RA21 is working on submission papers, sort of the low-hanging fruit of things that the project is working on, that people can start doing today, in enabling that gradual change of behavior across identity providers and content providers. Those papers will be published by the project and then rolled up into best practice as that sort of final formal standard together. You can expect that particular wrap-up. Who's involved? Well, different organizations. We have a steering committee that oversees the project as a whole, and it includes vendors, it includes libraries, it includes federation providers. We have an outreach and communications team. They are really quite amazing in terms of just how much effort they're putting into getting to the right conferences, putting together presentations, trying to make sure that we've answered as many questions as we can. They've done a lot to make sure the FAQ on the website answers the key questions that we often get after those conferences. In terms of people that are actually funded, none of us are full-time on this project. We all a little bit part-time. Julie Wallace is the project director. Many of you will have chatted with her via email today, but she's up in Scotland and she waves all these. Heather Flanagan, that's me. I primarily coordinate the academic pilot, and Jenny Walker coordinates the corporate pilot. At this point, let's go ahead and switch over to Alex. Yes, you can talk a little bit about what JISC is doing in terms of federated identity and how that's supporting the library use case.
Yeah, so just I'll bring in Alex, our technical specialist, talk about how we support libraries and publishers getting the best discovery experience for them. This isn't meant to be exactly how to do it. It's not meant to be perfect, but it should provide a little bit of a benchmark of how the UK Federation is actually doing it right now in production. And we have a very broad church of clients we serve. So we've got all the way from school, K-12, we've got public libraries who don't really actually want anything like this because they just want waitlist access. So people going through their portal, and then obviously we have the traditional academic route. So Alex, if you can hear me, if you want to bring yourself in.
I can certainly hear you, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Alex.
Okay. Hello, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Alex Stewart. I'm Principal Technical Specialist for the UK Federation at JISC. And it's myself and two of my colleagues that we staff the help desk. And between us, we've got a couple of decades experience supporting Federation operations, supporting participation within the UK Federation, which is currently about 800 identity providers and 1,500 service providers. And we've been talking to library and IT staff at those identity providers, and also the service providers, folks running the services as well. We can provide information and advice on that kind of full stack of things, from protocols, software, deployment and configuration, through to usability. But I think most relevant for this RA21 meeting is the information, the advice, the support and the troubleshooting that we provide for the IDP discovery. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about what we do in this space. I mean, Mark just there talked about library portals and wafeless URLs. I mean, one of the ways that librarians can allow the staff and students at their institutions to access services is to provide a library portal page. There, your IDP is implicitly known, and the users of those sites click a button to go to a particular resource. And those waveless URLs are something that we support within the UK Federation. We provide advice for that. They can be listed actually on the service provider site. If you're running a service already, you may do that. The UK Federation also, we have an available services page, so you can go and see what the waveless URL is. There's a lot of other information on there. We also have a tool called WooGen, which will generate these waveless URLs for you. And that has a kind of database of URLs, but it can also automatically generate these from the service provider's metadata. I think one of the things from the kind of automatic generation of that is it does need kind of metadata support from the federations. And we support what's called a request initiator. Some software products do support that, or you can build your own, and that allows automatic tools to go and say, well, what's the way that you could log into this service from that identity provider? So we have those kind of tools there. And we also provide advice on configuring those. What else? Sorry, so talking about metadata as well, one of the things that we as the UK Federation support are the metadata for user interfaces, which the RA21 project, I mean, certainly the P3W pilots that I've spent a bit of time working with, they're certainly looking at that. And these are things that provide a consistency of user experience. So it includes things like logos for both the identity provider and the service provider. There's display names, descriptions, privacy policy, a URL to a privacy policy for the service provider, IP hints, geolocation hints, domain hints. There's a whole lot of things in there that allow discovery services to provide a consistent experience. And we're working, well, we've supported these MDUI elements in metadata, you know, since before they were standardized in 2012. And now we are looking to harmonize these with other federations. So recommendations for kind of logo size and various things like that. Domain hints, I think, are coming out of the P3W pilot, which is a way for, I think there's a kind of proposal for an omnibox where staff and students could put in their email domain and would be able to then you could then be able to match that up to an identity provider. So that's something we're trying to support. Well, we support the registration of that, and we're looking to implicitly populate some of this metadata. So those are the things that we're doing with metadata, which then supports discovery services on top of that. And this is one way where service providers can kind of modularize their services. So instead of having a kind of monolithic, here's your service with a kind of drop-down page on that, which has a list of customer IDPs, one can then say, well, here's a service page, and separate to that, we have a discovery service. And there's a protocol that one used at the moment called the DS, the Discovery Service Protocol, that calls out from the service to from the actual content service to the discovery service. And that can be either local to the service provider, somewhere within their system, or can be external and hosted elsewhere. This doesn't quite map up to the way that the RA21 project is talking about kind of cloud pilot and P3W pilot, but there's a kind of similarity in there in the sense that we have a kind of local and a remote kind of discovery service. And what the UK Federation provides and has provided for a long time is a central discovery service that we run, which allows service providers to direct their users to our discovery service. We allow them to choose their IDP from a list of trusted IDPs, and then we redirect the users back to a trusted URL on the service provider's site. So that central discovery service has been working for us. Has been working for us for a long time, actually, and we're currently on something like version 3 of the technical architecture of this service. I could go to that. That's quite an interesting thing. But how am I doing for time, by the way?
Okay, you got about another, say, 5 minutes.
Okay. I probably won't digress too much into the service architecture of our CDS, but I just want to say that we've moved from what was a hard-to-scale service to something that's much more flexible. We've moved from physical machines, a few physical machines in a master-slave relationship, to a virtualized infrastructure that we can horizontally scale, and it's now running in a cloud provider. So there's something that's good, something that's resilient, something that's been running in production, and this works for a few hundred service providers at the moment. We provide that, we could scale up. And the service providers run from ones that provide just a few authentications per day, maybe kind of niche sites or collaboration sites, something, up to hundreds of thousands of authentications per month. And our central discovery service is serving up, millions of authentications per year. So we're quite, it's running in production. There's something there. It uses the DS protocol, which is also the protocol that the P3W sandbox uses, EduServe's Wayfinder product uses. So it's using a standardized protocol there. It's running in production. And certainly in terms of gradual implementation that Heather was talking about just at the start, an upgrade path might be for a service provider to go from some kind of drop-down discovery service on their own site to modularizing their site to use UK Federation Central Discovery Service, and then as the best practice outcomes from the RA21 project, as they're kind of finalized, and any kind of product comes out at the end of that, you'll then have a service provider that has moved towards that, is talking the DS protocol, and then can be and that can be then pointed to any of the kind of outcomes from the RA21 project and products coming from that. So I mean, that's one of the things that as a UK Federation help desk, myself and my colleagues we could provide advice on that. As I say on telly, we're waiting for your call. But if you do want to talk to us about this as an intermediate step, we'd certainly be willing to assist you with that. It does have some challenges. We, shouldn't brush those under the carpet. I mean, it's not a product in the sense that it couldn't be rolled out to local sites quite easily. I know that's one of the what Heather was just saying beforehand, and also things that there's the Discovery Service Code and Integrity Review that the RA21 project has looked at. So there's some of the challenges that have already been covered with that, but we're certainly willing to keep the conversation going there. I think that's really kind of run through a lot of the things that we do. So just to recap, I guess, waitelist URLs are a way that librarians can put into a kind of library portal. It implicitly knows the staff and student identity provider. We have a simple discovery service as well that we've been using in production. And those are the two things I want. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Alex. That's really useful. And as he said, if you, that won't take you all the way, but it could very well make your discovery better tomorrow. So feel free to get in touch with the UK Federation, service at UK Federation, .org.uk. If you've got an entity in the UK Federation or it's getting to us via educating or whatever, delighted to help because it helps users. Thanks, Alex. Don't get to mute your microphone now.
Fair enough. All right. Next, I want to invite Steve Hutton from University of Nottingham, who's going to talk a little bit about the situation in the library there, specifically on security protection.
My name's Lee. I'm a librarian, and I just work my role to manage our discovery services at the library. So our discovery service is more. A lot of my job is developing more. I'm economics. We have a policy at the university now buy e-books first version. We were interested very early on in the RA21 project, the pilot, so I came on in July. We were just about interested in this. At the university, my role also is authentication, so we use easy policy and also we have an IDP server. Access. My opposite number in IT is actually so I need integration. I'm more at the first line support, for library users and the library side integration. So I get to see a lot of Okay, so yeah, so I'm me and my colleagues in the library can get the sharp end. some of the issues that arise. Some end up being configuration issues, a lot of issues at service provider. So I've been invited to talk to you this morning about why the University of Nottingham Library Service is excited about RA21 and P3W pilot in particular. Of all the inquiries that we received about e-resources, problems with access absolutely dominate. For all the reports of broken links, link resolvers like SFX failing to resolve to the correct content, and subscription issues, just as many, if not more, complaints coming from users who fail to authenticate because they pick the wrong option or they can't find where to log in, and they give up in frustration. For all the users who take time to report their problems to us and find our reporting routes, we know there must be many more who curse at the screen and grow more and more frustrated. These use cases worry us as a library the most of all, because they may be really struggling to use the e-resources that we offer and that we pay for, but they're not coming to the library for help. And even worse than that, they may be holding the library responsible for their difficulties. That's quite a common occurrence with all of our services. So Primo, Cloud, hosted with Primo. It's our service, but we've got one service. If it goes down, the library, the library support, the library service, and the exit. It's the same for resources as well. Whichever platform we're trying to see that. Service, complaints, library in particular. As Heather's covered already earlier on this morning, on the surface, offering IP authentication on campus may seem wonderful, and in terms of ease and convenience, it is wonderful. Run a search, and 2 or 3 clicks later, you've got a full text article open in front of you without being asked to log in. In reality, though, there is a huge gap between this user experience and the one they have when they're off campus. And the library service is forced to put out mixed and confusing messages. There's no need to log in at all if you're working in the library or in your halls of residence or your office. But step out of the bubble of on campus and spend your working time anywhere else and put it with a significantly degraded experience. Try and find a login prompt that will be in different places on different websites. You could say institutional login, Shibboleth login, UK Access Management Federation login, or something similar. Also, please don't pick the Athens option or try and log into your personalised account, as that won't work. You all understand this problem too well. RA21 and the P3W pilot is trying to close and even eliminate this gap. We are living in a society where people want and expect to be able to work wherever they like, using devices that are portable and take them away from the desktop in their workplace office to a laptop, phone, tablet in a place of their choosing. Many of our library users are always off campus. They're distance learners, part-time students, or they're doing a course where they don't feel the need to access print material at all, and so they never visit the library. And we have a lot of students like that. Science STM students who access everything. Students and staff at our university and probably many others, they're used to logging into accessing their email. We use Office 365, which is just logging for 5 minutes. We use Moodle, we have a reading system, they all require logins. So in my opinion, in my colleagues' opinion, users won't have any problem with being asked to log into accessing resources as well, whether they're on or off campus. I don't think it's an issue. It's one that kind of arises because on-campus access is so easy. But if that was to change, I don't think that. Privacy is critically important, and the principles of the SAM protocol reassure institutions like ours that greater use of Shibboleth authentication strengthens the defence against accounts being compromised. It also provides the great benefit of being able to identify which user accounts are accessing which resources and whether they're staff or students, which is great for obtaining more granular usage stats, but also an effective way of better pinning down accounts that might have downloaded an excessive amount of content, which triggers publisher warnings to the library and temporary loss of access. For library users, though, making e-resource access a pleasant and satisfying experience is everything. They are free to choose whatever starting point they like for their research. We've got BMO, Google Scholar. A lot of students have their favourite databases that they go to all the time. There's so many choices now, so many starting points for them to use. But with the P3W pilots and the recommendations that are going to come out of it, the big change will be that the message from the library will become really clear and really simple. We can say to users, if the resource is not free to access, you'll have to log in and identify yourself. Users will accept this with no problems, whether they are on or off campus, but they will have the following expectations. The place where they need to log in needs to be familiar and consistent across different websites. They would expect the UI to guide them through the process as quickly and easily as possible, and they would only expect to be asked to log in once per session. As you'll see today, the P3W pilot and the UI prototypes that it's creating are already getting close to ticking all of these boxes, and at the University of Nottingham we hope that the recommendations that are made are embraced and adopted by all.
A note to the next set of speakers. There's your microphone. Folks remote would love if you. Okay, I'm going to just do a really quick review of the different position papers that are being worked on right now. So position papers, as I mentioned earlier, are supposed to be very short, very targeted documents that try and give immediate guidance on things that different groups could do to improve the identity discovery process for users. These are things that could be implemented today, regardless of what else comes out of the RA21 project. And in fact, they will be incorporated in the final overall recommendations the project makes. They are primarily targeted at the IT departments that would actually be doing implementations more than they would be targeted towards the folks supporting the end users themselves. The first one, which is mostly finished, but still undergoing a fair amount of internal review, is targeted at identity providers and federation operators. And what we're basically saying is there are a lot of attributes out there about your organization. It would be really helpful if you populated those attributes with information. And in particular, here are the key attributes that if these were consistently populated by your identity providers, it would make the discovery process much easier for users. You would be offering hints that you know about that then any discovery service could pick up, use, and help narrow down perhaps the list of IDs presented in any given situation. That paper also talks a little bit about session management. Many institutions are using software called Shibboleth to enable federated identity, and that's great. It's nice that there's an open source platform being used. The default in that platform for having to retype in your password is 30 minutes. That's probably a little aggressive. And a number of federations, for example, Switch in Switzerland, have put out advice saying to switch this to 12 hours. So essentially, it's a once a business day plug-in session control instead of every 30 minutes. So that's something we're considering. Is that reasonable to put in a position paper? It's not. If this does go in there, it's not going to be an absolute everybody should do this. You need to assess your own risk tolerance, because maybe your materials are sensitive enough that you really do want a 30-minute or maybe even a 15-minute session management. But for the majority of use cases, longer session management probably makes sense for identity providers. The second paper, it's definitely more drafty, is aimed towards the content providers. in terms of trying to find short-term suggestions on what they can do on their web pages to make the process easier for users. For instance, if we could suggest that all content providers should use the same style of box, the same words, perhaps sign in, perhaps request access, still talking about that. That's something that could be done today regardless of any other recommendations coming forward. So if the project can agree to those, that's another low-hanging fruit option to get improvements out sooner rather than later. Also, part of that paper would be assuming that people pick up on the identity provider recommendations of populating these attributes about that particular organization, then the content providers in turn should be prepared to use that information when it's available. Those kinds of things. Other papers may be created over time as we find things that are also low-hanging fruit of, okay, well, this is an obvious thing that we can change today. We're open to doing more of that as the project finds out. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Chris Shillham, and he's going to talk a bit more detail about the C3W pilot.
Well, good morning, everybody. I am Chris Shillham from Elsevier. I'm also co-chairing, along with Milton, the RA21 initiative. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the C3W pilot. Apologies for the tongue twister. Hopefully it's fairly descriptive of what we're trying to do. So this project is trying to improve, I think, the core of the initiative, the identity provider discovery process, by incorporating additional weight hints, these metadata UI hints that I talked about, into the Federation metadata, and making both that and information browser, making use of that in order to narrow down the IDP options during the initial discovery process. We are working or aiming to improve the sign-in flow by using a smart search, making use of that metadata, and implementing a consistent and familiar user experience across participants. And you'll hear about that a little bit later on, but here we have joined forces with the Wave Cloud pilot, and we're pursuing our common UX track across both initiatives. One of the key things is to enable cross-service provider assistance of that where you've got points. So the idea here, and about this later, is that when you have to ask the user where they're from, you make that much easier by improving the discovery process, and you ask them less often by remembering them. And the key here, and the very tricky thing, is to try and make that choice of where you're from persist across all the participants. So you might go to publisher A, let them know, and publisher B will already know, without compromising the user. And that's really the heart of what we're trying to figure out in this pilot. We have a group of participants from across the community, being led by Sunet, which is the our research and education project provider in Sweden, project management from JISC, which is the organization of federation operators in Europe, and participation from a number of publishers, service providers, vendors, and so we really are pursuing lining up with those aims. Two components for C3W, the service. One is the IDP search. So there are already several shared Chibboleth discovery services out there, and that's one of the things that Sunet provides and brings to the table. We're working to improve that process by making use of some of the metadata we talked about. The idea here, obviously, is there'd be a consistent search box, and these are little snippets from the UI prototype you'll see later, but also suggestions maybe based on location or something else, and maybe kind of previous in an IP address or candidate, that kind of thing, to improve that process. Then, once you've been through it the first time, your previous IDP choice is remembered in the user's browser, right? So that's the privacy preserving angle of this. That data is not stored somewhere centrally, just remains inside the user's account. And the idea here is, depending on the service provider's use case, they can use one of these services or the other, or again, so the service provider, for example, already has their own discovery process, or for example, if they have to worry about integrating other types of authentication beyond Kibboleth, they might want to use the central discovery service. They could also use the existing service set. We're also pursuing two different models for integrating the service. We call it the classic central discovery service. It should be very lightweight and easy for service providers to integrate. Essentially, they're providing a link to the discovery service where you do the rig selection, rig persistence, etc. The discovery service in turn hands off to the ID provider. The ID provider would hand the user back when they're authenticated to the service provider. And there are many services like this out there already. Again, the thing that we're working on here is introducing the into that one. The other thing we're working on is what we call a deep integration model. Right? So if a service provider wants to offer that very fun service in their own UI, because maybe it's less jarring for users to jump out to a different website, or because again they want to integrate other tiny options. We're offering kind of a browser-based API model for the service provider to integrate that discovery service and the IDP persistence service into the browser. One of the things that we want to try and get away from are these screens that we've all seen on various services where you have to choose whether you want to sign in with a local account or sign in with your institution. Because that's one of the things that users find very confusing. They try and put their institutional credentials into the local sign-in box, or they try and click on the institution, and they just get very confused. And the idea is kind of a one-box design with this deep integration model. Give us some information, either your institution name or your NEL domain, and we'll figure out what to use. So from the UI flow, lining up with those two services is pretty obvious. The first time the user goes through this, the discovery service would check if the local browser's local storage already contains a set of previously visited IDPs. So they display a list for the user to choose from. If there is no pre-existing IDP, or if the user wants to select another one because they don't like what's being remembered, the user will go through the search interface. So I kind of talked about this a little bit. How are we aiming to preserve privacy in this pilot? Well, the first key technique is that whatever information is used in that discovery process, whether it is the full email address, and that's one of the things we're testing, that might be useful. The way users bootstrap this process, because they often know what their institutional email address is, or the domain, or the institution name itself, because that's calling the API happens inside the user's browser with JavaScript. That kind of full information then needs to leave the user's browser. And one of the key things here is to try and come up with a UI that will make it clear to the user. For example, even if they put their full email address in, it's not going anywhere other than being used inside the browser. And the other piece is, again, storing that IDP preference in local browser storage. So the model here essentially is that there will be some common JavaScript that all participating organizations would integrate into their websites. Common JavaScript would manage the storage and retrieval of the stored IDPs from the browser local storage and make that available to the service that's integrating that JavaScript. So some of the challenges architecture for this deep integration model and interrogating the browser local storage across domains is quite challenging. In order to make sure that this works across domains, but also adheres to the browser security models, you essentially are using iframes for cross-domain messaging, and we're kind of working through the best way to do that now in order to maintain the maximum possible compatibility with all the browsers. And one of the things that browser manufacturers are very sensitive to is cross-domain messaging, because that's how advertising tracking cookies things work. So we're trying to find that consistency. We're pretty sure there are ways we can do this, but finding the best way to do this, which also has a consistent, seamless, obvious UI. I mentioned already the challenge of integrating local accounts is another key one, right? So there's one box where the user tries to gain access, and they can either put a local username in there to sign in locally, or let their institution. So we're looking at both UI models and technical models to enable those two things to integrate, and really, as Heather alluded to, getting that IDP metadata in order to drive that discovery process, even though there are standards for it. And when we started the project a year ago, we had with new standards for where to put your main hints or your IP hints in the metadata. Well, it turns out that was what we've done. But there is very little consistency in how various IDPs and federations are actually using those standards. So that's where Heather's best practices paper comes in to try and align on how we're use them. So where are we? So SUNET's been doing the kind of core development in enhancing their PIF.io pilot platform to support that cross-domain storage of the IDP preference, and also incorporating this low-level discovery service API, the integration model. That was released to SUNET's Git repository last week, just ahead of the technical deep dive meeting that Heather mentioned we had on Monday. Now we're in the process of several of the other participants trying to integrate that into technical prototype. So our next step really is to prove that the technology works and we can adjust the approach. Once that's done, we want to reach out to the library community to try and actually get prototypes tested to come to. So that's it from me. Any questions? Right, well, I will hand over to Milton to talk about the wafer.
Also,
I'm Melton, the chair. I'm from Wiley, and it's a quick mention to co-chair the RA21 task force. I'm also helping with the taking care of the Great Flag pilot. So the aim and purpose of the Great Flag pilot is similar to the other pilots, provide a seamless experience to the user. Here we actually try to get to as close as possible to the IP authentication. And we want to eliminate steps that the user takes, going from one publisher to the other publisher, and we're actually trying to leverage existing protocols, the discovery services, and all that. The unique thing here is that there is a centralized service that remembers where the device has been to before in terms of publishers and relationship. So once the user moves in and visits an institute, we don't have to ask the user again where the user is coming. Again, the data formats and data exchanges are looking to establish by communicating to the service, and we're going to follow the common user experience that we're all contributing to design part of this project initiative. There are a small group of participants. They first focused on getting the code written, because unless you have a centralized code written, it's very hard to test it and experiment with it. At a farm, they generously donated development resources to us, and they were able to stand up. And we're working with a small group of libraries now and vendors to see how that could be integrated into the as I mentioned, simply what we're aiming for is just like how we work with any other service that we'd like to use. We plug in once, they are giving our choices. If you remember what we did before, if they consented. And then we just offer that as a choice and we remember what we stated in our experience. And the way it works at a very high level is that there is a cloud service in the middle, runs centrally. It has a simple data format definition, it has a simple interface definition, and then it allows the platforms to communicate with each other by sharing only necessary and sufficient data that we need to make it work. And we have a decentralized trust model because we trust the parties that give us information about where the user came from, and we secure that, and we know that parties are involved in trust. Very simply, when a user comes in clicks on the article, logs into a publisher's platform, we share where the user is coming from to that publisher into the cloud. We create a unique ID for that device. And next time the user comes in, we check if we know the institution, and we just provide that as a case. If the user is coming from the same institute, which is the majority of the time, they're able to just plug in. If the user has accounts with multiple institutions, like community, we just actually fix that and also add a relationship. The three components in place that does this. There's a simple widget that the service provider gives integrate the first time the user can use just there's an API that goes back and forth to create new data, and then there's the cloud itself. The data is stored in the cloud essentially. And the minimum amount of data necessary to make the interaction. And this relationship enables the almost IP. The challenges we're trying to address with this one is that, but we have what Heather and Chris mentioned, we have the metadata challenge to begin with. So we need to have clean metadata calculated. We're not necessarily addressing that here. Because we're storing data essentially, there's an inherent potential for security privacy systems. So we said that this pilot actually has the burden of proof that we do not violate security, we do not violate privacy. So we have a whole work stream attached to security and privacy. And because the concerns and things that we need to take care of are similar across the pilots, this pilot actually has the responsibility of addressing that for all the pilots. So we have an afternoon session today to look at security and privacy concerns across all the pilots. The other thing that movements are very related. So the other concept we're looking at, and there's a small component of this in the HRW pilot as well, how do we operate a centralized common source code in the first place, who contributes to that. Our intention is that not the entity runs it, but a collaboration runs it, non-profit entity. Look to all been doing that, it's not very easy. And once you write the code, how does it operate, who maintains it, and for our quality. Those are the three challenges we're addressing. Getting into a bit more detail for security and privacy, so we're thinking that this comes as two separate steps. One is the almost non-technical, the privacy one, and we're actually focusing heavily on what the requirements are from GDPR, GLBA, and all the other regulations that we all need to comply with. And then we're looking to have some privacy impact assessments and also protecting controls and compare against pilot and see what the implementation. The Similarly, the security track, which by default inherently is more technical, that's on hardware users review securely, hardware operating it securely, what measures we expect to do with data privacy, what we do with experience with standards. We have the RA21 has a voluntary checklist, so we took that and starting with that one. We don't want to be any questions, and then the group is going to evaluate. Our working group has a bunch of CISOs from the participating organization. We're actually relying on a lot of expertise in this area. Just a little bit more detail on open sourcing and running a shared service. So we have a list of questions. This pilot doesn't intend to recommend what organization needs to run and how it should exactly work, but we're hoping that with this pilot, actually we create a charter for another group as a follow-up after the pilot to figure out how to operate and how to run a sample service. Where are we with this? We already have a pretty robust code written and licensed under Apache version 2.0. There's documentation, website, API documentation for the providers to come in and start integrating it with us. And there's a sandbox for anybody who can create how to do that. Our next steps are the privacy security work stream, figuring out the interface, the testing, and usability. So that we're looking to, now that we have code written, expand and contact with so we can test with identity providers. So this is serious. And we'll figure out the charges for the operating shares. And we're also going to, once this experience spread actually matures, we'll come back and we'll implement some of this experience guidance. And that's it. I'm turning it over to either Heather or Chris. Because Helen is not here. Okay. Thank you.
I get to wear 3 hats today. It's very exciting. I've been Julia, I've been me, and now I get to be Helen. Helen and Julia both have a much nicer accent than I do, so sorry about that. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. This is a quick update on the corporate pilot. So as it turns out, the pharmaceutical research industry has a lot of similarities to academic research in terms of have researchers. They need to access scholarly publications. They have interesting challenges in terms of sometimes being off-site. They can't rely on IP address authorization because company mergers happen enough that IP addresses change frequently. So they've got some very similar challenges in the space. The objectives for the corporate pilot first would be to test single sign-on, which for them is something a bit new when it comes to federated identities. Improve the user experience as they figure out how to use this with their researchers. And they also have a particular requirement for granular usage statistics. Understandably, some of the privacy concerns about what are our employed researchers researching and how does that fit into a different cost center gives them some specific needs in terms of user tracking that you don't actually have in activity. Involved are 5 different pharmaceutical countries: AbbVie, BASF, Roche, GSK, and Novartis, and 4 of the large publishers: Elsevier, ACS, Scrivener Nature, and Wiley. For them, when they're on their corporate campus, or at least their corporate network, they're looking at a pretty straightforward access to material, very similar to being on a library at a university. They can just click on this, no personal information is there, and they can get to the article that they need. Where it gets a little bit more edgy for them is when they're off the corporate network, having a similar page that directs them to a login page, and from that login, they're using their GSK or Novartis or BASF identity. They can log in and then again get access to material of those screening publishers. Since they are almost, but not completely like academia, one of the things that they've been exploring is developing a corporate federation instead of joining an academic federation. This proved to be extremely challenging. Setting up a federation is no small thing. But they tested it out to see how easy would it be to do. The answer was not very. So now they're looking at some different options in terms of perhaps using a JISC service for this, perhaps working with Safe Biopharma, some other group that has an established federation. They don't have to bootstrap that particular effort. As I mentioned, they do have some pretty specific needs around usage statistics. For them, this comes down to who's being charged for what within the company. So how this will actually happen is open for discussion. They're talking about developing an attribute that means something to the pharmaceutical companies. It doesn't mean anything necessarily to the service provider themselves, publisher, such that if the company wants departmental tracking, then that's what they would put in this attribute. And then the publisher could just say, okay, here's a report on whatever that thing was. That's how many times that thing pulled resources from our site. Another company may want that down to the user level. It won't really matter. It's a per company decision. So they're exploring how to actually do that right now. In order to get this done, this isn't something that the pharmaceutical companies can do by themselves. It's not something that the technology experts can dictate, and it all has to work for the customers. So they need this to be a very cooperative effort. And that's it. And here we're going to switch to user experience. I think I need to switch slides really quick. This is the Windows box. How do I get to that?
Oh.
Yeah. And with that, I introduce Dan Ayala of ProQuest. His organization is helping leading the user experience. We are extremely grateful.
Good morning. Well, first and foremost, since we're an industry of ensuring right attribution for things, all of this content actually is UX team. I'm dealing with security and privacy, but we have this UX team led by one of my colleagues, Selena Rosenhan, who couldn't be here today. She actually is a UX expert. I am not. But these are her and the team, the working team's ideas of progress. I mean, they've made some amazing progress. I want to bring you up to date on it. We're going to have some actual click-throughs of where the team thinks, how the team thinks things should progress, and I will really want feedback as well as we go through it. So let's start out with the UX challenge. Heather did this at the beginning around the problem we're trying to solve. The multi-click, I'm just going to very quickly go through this. On network, directly access to the PDF, off network, click, 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 click. Oh, I have to log in, have to select the institution, and oh, I'm more institution again. Now insert username and password, and now I can get to it. Just a reminder, that's the way things are today. So what have we been working on within the UX team? Looking at things like recommending the access strategy beyond IP, looking at the fundamental of SAML, as the underlying technology. Excuse me. User experience becomes absolutely fundamental. SAML in and of itself isn't necessarily difficult, but you can make it difficult with a bad user experience. And the WAIF has been historically a place where people abandon. I've seen statistics of 80% abandon rates when they get to a WAIF, the Where Are You From page. They're gone, they're not coming back. And as we've heard a few times this morning, people off-network, the use of the library off-network is growing and growing, and we need to account for how to accommodate those users. And so we've been testing and are preparing for the technology, trying to layer the UX onto the technology pilots based on the work that you'll see here. So there, you heard of 3 different pilots. In reality, as we started to walk through the user experience piece, it became clear that the user experience, it was very similar. The needed user experience was very similar for all 3 of these, for corporate, for the WAIF cloud, and for the P3W. The need is the same. The underlying technologies will be different. So we've actually come back to a single workflow, and we're going to have to test it out in each of those environments to make sure it really is fit for purpose for each of them. But right now, one common best practice experience. Start with the end in mind. What's the desired experience? And then take the technical approach on top of it. And then this is a conscious decision. NISO is the espresso guidelines are there. We're conscious of them. And there are some cases where they may or may not work. We may want to take the outcomes of this and try and help inform espresso. So be aware as you see that some of these things are not necessarily directly in line with espresso, but it has been contemplated as they've been done, as these decisions are. So there have been UX workshops all through the last half of this year, looking at who are the personas, who are the people we need to solve problems for students, faculty, for corporation users, understanding who they are and what their needs are. Then looking at the workflows and drawing out what steps lead to what, and then working on prototypes. There's a phrase that's been used amongst the team, as seamless as possible. This is going to add some level of interaction beyond what most users on network get today via IP authentication. They don't even know that authentication is happening. This is going to add something. So trying to do it in as easy a way and as seamless a way as they move from provider to provider. We're looking at things like a single input field, email an institution, reduce the number of different places they have to make choices about what they enter, using their entry to try and determine what they're trying to get to. If they enter an email address, perhaps taking off the domain name and using that as a way to find out what institution it is. If they type a school name or a company name, using that. Taking things that they've previously used. If I've already successfully logged into an institution, hashing that and making that available to them, so they don't have to go back through typing it out. And looking at which steps are absolutely necessary. I want to walk through. This is not a working, this is a click-through mock-up, but we'll walk through a number of scenarios. Can the people remote see the web page? Okay, I didn't know if it was limited to just PowerPoint. So we start out, a user is off-network and does a search for biodegradable and sustainable fibers. The top first result they go to, they click on, and we use Google Scholar as the base because so much traffic is being generated from Google Scholar. In reality, that entry point can be anything. But this is their first hit onto an RA21 participating site. They are not logged in, they get the purchase PDF, so you know they're not logged in. At the bottom, or somewhere on the page, will be a button. And again, the wording right now is full access. We are looking at alternative words, alternative looks. One thing you'll note, and we'll talk about this in a minute more, is this particular icon. This will not be the final icon. One of the things is a visual cue so that a user knows about the process they're about to embark on. We think of it similar to a Wi-Fi symbol, something recognizable that they can then use. They click on it, and it takes them to the login page. Again, you'll see the same visual cue here, and they can, I guess first and foremost, based on their location, we've got now physically, geographically close schools. I had this person in Washington, physically in Washington. Turns out, though, they go to the Ohio State University. They start typing Ohio, and they get some cues based on that. Click on Ohio State University, enter their Ohio State University credentials, the same ones they use to get into their grade system with their HR system, something they know. They may already be logged into this, too, for the day, and if so, this just continues through, just like any other single sign-on. And now that they're logged in, you'll note in the upper right, well, actually, people in the room won't note under the upper right because there's an image there, but there is a logo of the Ohio State University there now. Again, a potential visual cue to show them that they are logged into the institution. When they scroll down, now they will see download PDF, and if they click on that, they will then have access to the PDF. Well, this user isn't done researching. She comes back to her Google Scholar page and goes to the second link. This is the ProQuest link. Again, the same common visual cue around getting access. It's not immediately logged in. You click here on that visual cue, and now what they get back is something different than before. Before, it had taken the cues of geography. Now, it saw that I was logged in and gives me Ohio State University. I can click on it, and the credential is cached. I stay logged in, and now I've got the ability to download the PDF directly. This, again, there can be a third. You come to ACS. It's not logged in. You get full access. Click on the same link. And now, again, the Ohio State University logo is in the corner, and you can download it. Yeah. Consistent remembering of the credential. I didn't have to log in again. I didn't have to go back to a wait page. We are exploring the options of making this, making that login page, this one, potentially remember and pass through it. But there are use cases where people have multiple institutions or multiple accounts that they need to log into. So we can't assume that everyone will want this to pass through every time. That's use case one. Any questions about that? Yeah, please.
How do you deal with different names of institutions? These are quite simple to put in. What if you're in Belgium and your institution?
Yeah, so the question for those that didn't hear was, how will we deal with the case where the institution name could be in multiple languages? The example was in Belgium, where it may be in English, it may be in French, and it may be in English, French, or maybe in Flemish. I don't know that we have an answer to that, but again, the list of institutions can be populated in multiple. I haven't vetted, but it's a list of institutions that ties to lists coming out of the federations today. So I don't know if there's a means to do that, Chris.
Yeah, so there are two answers to that, two parts to that answer. One is obviously the metadata needs to be there. So there are ways for institutions to say, here are my alternate language names, here are my abbreviated names, etc. That would be part of the metadata standardization proposal. The other half of it is how to make that search work, right? So you can type in something in multiple languages and you get your answers to what you're trying to do. So that search functionality is actually quite complex. So we're working on an Elsevier right now to figure out what to make searchable and what to display in the list.
So I talked about consistent cues. The goal here is to give something that people know about the process they're about to embark on. We'll refine the look, we'll refine the wording. But in general, and I'm interested in feedback on this, is the need for having such a visual cue that people instantly know, oh, I'm about to do this, this is the process that I will see, and it'll be consistent regardless of what. Is this something that makes sense? Okay. Anybody think it's a poor idea?
As long as you get the visual cue right, that's going to be visual. Or visual cueing both.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And for those on the phone, the comment was, as long as the visual cue, you get the visual cue right. Doing a poor visual cue will have equally negative impact to having a good visual cue. And of course, we're going to take into account global considerations, make it so that it's identifiable no matter where you are in the world, and we're also trying right now to figure out the balance of, use the term branding, but this visual cue alongside the institution's branding, how they play together, what the balance of that is. And that's still a discussion on. There's a second use case. So not everybody is part of a federation. Not everybody has SAML access or directory-based access for their institution. There are cases where people have local accounts at the service provider that also need to be accounted for. Just a quick walkthrough of how that case will go. Move something. All right. So I've done a search, again, on biodegradable and sustainable fibers. The first link takes me to Elsevier, same process as before. I am at the Ohio State University. I log in, and I get my PDF. Now, I go back to, oh, I'm sorry. This is logging in with a local account. I don't have an institution account. I go to full access, and now I use something. I use my Jack is using Google Scholar to find the research materials. Clicks the first link. When Jack clicks full access, he can search his school or his Elsevier username. It's also presented with a couple of schools. Jack types in his username, jack@allenbrain.com. That's I'm using a non-US. And now it knows that this is an account that's Elsevier's, and it takes me directly to the Elsevier login. I log in with my local account in Elsevier, and now you'll note, well, and people in the room will not note, but underneath the picture there at the top, it now shows Jack at Allenbrain logged in where there used to be an Elsevier login button, and it remains logged in. Jack then goes back to log into the ProQuest, to log to the second search result, which is ProQuest. Now this is the case, the Elsevier account will have no ability to get access to things in ProQuest, so he goes to full access and can use his Ohio State, excuse me, his Ohio State University credentials and download the PDF. Now Jack takes a couple of week vacation and comes back. The credentials have expired, but needs another item on this same search. When he goes to log in, he goes back to full access, and now you see that the local account as well as Ohio State University are both kept. That local account will only be visible when he's on Elsevier. If he's on another service provider, the local account won't show because it doesn't have it. This is a way to merge these two paradigms into a single user experience. And if he clicks on Jack at Allenbrain, again, you can't see in the room, but he's been logged in. back to Elsevier. Timeline for the rest of the UX work stream. For the rest of this year, workshops and outreach. We're currently refining this. It's probably on its 10th major iteration of the user experience. We're looking to finish it in the early part of next year and get it ready for pilots. We're also going to look to do some user testing, get these click-throughs in the hands of actual users, actual librarians, and get feedback and bring those in as well. Pilots, first quarter, second quarter, first draft of best practices, and then by the third quarter, publication of the project. At the same time, of course, this will be working alongside the technical project to make sure that these are feasible on both sides, UX fits, technical. As always, the RA21 website, please go there.